we are in New Mexico. We've just made quite a climb from lowland up to this mountaintop. It is certainly one of our area. It's one of the richest places. In ancient writings, the stone that Scott and I are now standing on is a huge boulder. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but I want you to notice, I have little doubt, but what we have a combination of alphabets used upon this stone. This, I have little doubt, is very ancient. It is obvious. This is by percussion, but it is very, very ancient. And look, note as I trace. Ancient Ogham, we've got some real surprises for you. In this particular valley, it is strange, but we even have some ancient Irish Ogham. Ogham of the type that you observed at the first documentary presented from this area. And along with this, that we find the Hebrew language, Nomadian, as well as through Ogham. And here on this particular site, we have the both. We have the both. And perhaps even one other alphabet that I'm not particularly acquainted with, but we're going to share it with you anyway. And I'm sure that you will find it very exciting. And with us today, and the one that has directed us here and been a great assistance to us, you all remember Scott. And I'm going to just let Scott say a few words concerning this site, and then we'll begin exploring this particular area. The drawings, the hieroglyphics that we'll be showing you today are within, say, what, Scott, 500 feet area, 1,000 feet?
I would say that most of the glyphs we have here are within an area containing about 50 square yards here.
Right.
So I have found other glyphs up on in some of the caves up here, although they seem to be most prominent right here in this spot. I do plan on furthering my investigation into this particular mountain, because I've got reports of village scenes here where they took and ground their corn in the holes. The rocks are still, the holes are still in the bedrock here, and I believe we have a village situation near here within a couple miles. The way I found this spot, I had to do a lot of research on it to come to this, to get to this little valley here, because it is a protected area by the federal government, and the only way to protect it is not to let the general public know the location of it. I believe that's one of this place is real remote and out of the way, and I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't had, so far I haven't found any vandalism here. So that anything we find here, I believe, is original, contrary to some places where some people have come in and written their own writings into the rocks, and that just throws everybody out of balance here. We're working on a scheme to protect these places, and right now in Albuquerque we've got some protected, and we're going to join forces with them, and we're going to try to protect the whole Rio Grande Valley here. There's petroglyph sites like this throughout the Rio Grande Valley, Members Valley, and whatnot. And people are welcome to come and look at them, but all we ask is that the location not be disclosed to the general public, such as in newspapers and things. So we're keeping the site. That's the reason why we're not mentioning where the site is here.
Well, thank you, Scott. And of course you understand why that's a very wise decision. But beloved, you're very fortunate for the simple reason that we're on this site. It's a fascinating site, and you're there. And one of the things you've heard me say many times is that the rocks, the mountains, and the hills speak. And you got to listen, because the history of ancient America is not found in books. The history of the ancient history of America is not found in great libraries necessarily, but you find it in the stone, the trail sign. And sometimes it takes an old trail reader, well, I'll say such as Scott here, to bring out the real history of ancient America. How fascinating it must have been years ago as many people passed through this great valley, this Rio Grande Valley, and some making it their home, and some traveling, some no doubt seeking precious metal and so forth, and many cases of heartache, and then later even the stagecoach lines coming through this area into what would have been Hot Springs at that time, today TRC. It's a fascinating area, and we'll begin now and show you some of these beautiful drawings, letters, and a combination that I think you'll enjoy. All right, here we return to Gravette. I want to introduce you to a very eloquent park ranger that taught us there in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, in the Elephant Butte Park, that people had dated back as long as 11,000 years ago coming through this valley. So I want you to expand your minds as we go into this documentary on things that are sometimes difficult to understand, but it's good to meditate on these things, the past, the present. Our Father, who's the same yesterday, today, and He'll be the same tomorrow. Well, people basically remain the same. So as she gives you a short introduction into some of the people that have passed through this way, let's go to her at this time and welcome to this documentary. Okay, good day to you. Here we are at the State Park in New Mexico, Truth or Consequences. TRC as the natives call it. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Kelly Hauser. Kelly Hauser, who is here in this museum. Kelly, it's good to have you with us.
Nice to be with you.
Kelly, we're very interested in the chronological order of inhabitants here in the Rio Grande Valley. And I note you have this chart. Could you just take a moment and explain those to us, please?
Okay. The first ones we had were the Paleo-Indian. They inhabited this area between 11,000 BC and 7,000 BC. The characteristic artifacts that we are finding from them are mostly stone dart and spear points. It's really unknown on what kind of housing or anything that they did have, but they were believed to be mostly hunting and gathering for their living. The next one would be the Archaic, and that was from 7,000 BC to 200 AD. And again, a lot of the artifacts were stone dart points. And again, in this area, their architecture is unknown, but they were believed to sustain themselves with hunting and gathering.
Also,
we had the early pit house, and that was between 200 and 750 AD. Their artifacts are mostly plain brownware. They lived in pit houses, which are round, and they have earth-roofed little dugouts that they make. And they, again, had hunting and gathering, and they started doing farming. The next one we would have would be the late pit house. That was from 750 to 1000 AD. They had boldface, black on white pottery, which I believe we do have some pictures on down here. They also lived in pit houses. Some of theirs, they got more to square instead of the round. And they, again, were hunting, gathering, and farming. We then got into the Mimbres, and that was from 1000 to 1150, and maybe a little longer than that. They had the classic Mimbres black on white pottery that I guess is pretty common. A lot has been found. Their architecture was more stone pueblos. They got a little fancier, I guess. And they were increased more, they relied more on farming and stuff than the hunting.
Ancient Ogham. Well, you know, there are about 22 alphabets in Brazil, with only 2 or 3 having been solved. Ancient Ogham, ancient Irish Ogham, I will say, is a language that has been around for quite some time, and we are in the process of interpreting many of the pictographs you're going to be shown and alphabets in this documentary.
Within a 50-yard circle, there were about 60 pictographs. And how precious it is when we see the hours that someone spent on this mountain. And I might say that as I came off this mountain, and as we were leaving, it seemed that in a spiritual sense there were a people saying, please deliver our message. Hours and hours had gone into chiseling, into leaving these messages for you, cut in stone, ancient, yeah, and some, I use the term near ancient and ancient. Some were so ancient that I think maybe some of the first that traveled through the valley might have left their part of the writings there. I want to share with you, you all remember Olin Fala. Olin Fala was that one that showed up in Ireland that we believe to be Jeremiah. Jeremiah the prophet, yes, with Baruch his scribe along. He has a tomb there in Ireland, and I want to share with you part of the drawings. The ancient Ogham left there in Ireland. Let's go to this time, if we may, to the tomb of Olin Fala and one of the stones that is found near the back of the wall. I want you to notice particularly this letter here at the top. I want you to notice this drawing with the staff and the cross, and I want you to notice this particular drawing. You have seen many of these here in New Mexico. The rosette, we've observed this, but bear in particular this. We find a nearness to this, not to Numidian Hebrew, but I cannot tell you, quite frankly, and the meaning of this letter. I could in Numidian, but we're not sure that it even has a Hebrew Numidian translation. But we are working on it. But I wanted to share this with you anyway. Now we're going to move the camera back to New Mexico. We're going to some of the writings that were in this 50-yard circle. It was an interesting, very interesting place, and a place that very few men have ever set foot. Very much out of the way. This, you'll be seeing a first. They've never been presented to the public anywhere before, at least to my knowledge, and I think I can speak with accuracy on that point. We're going to go to that at this time, this being in New Mexico. I hope that this will come through for you. I want you to notice the circle with the bar and the cross, and then I want you to note the same drawing as from Olin Fala's tomb in Ireland, the same ancient Ogham left. There have been newer which are actually ancient even over this, but I bring this to your attention because how often, I'll do that one more time, notice the circle, the same as at Olin Fala's tomb, the bar and your crossbars, and then the S, if I'll say it Numidian Hebrew, the S above, which would even be part of the sacred name. This in New Mexico and in the Rio Grande River Valley, and the one just prior to this that I had shown you was from New Mexico. Thousands of miles apart, but we do know, as you're going to see, that a very Anglo-looking person with beard was also in this valley, and we will document that within this documentary beyond any shadow of a doubt. Now, the S in Numidian, in this same grouping, I want to show you another picture here in a moment that will take you, here we go, the same autograph signed off that was above, if you would, the stone in Olin Fala's tomb. Ancient Irish Ogham, yep, in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. I'm going to go to one other picture that was in this same surrounding that I think you will enjoy. Numidian Hebrew. This is going to be very difficult for you to pick up because it is ancient. 2 bars and your Numidian Hebrew within this, letting us know that somewhere through that Gulf of New Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico. We had travelers, and we have about 3 different alphabets that you're going to be observing in this particular documentary. I wish I could say that I could translate every word of it for you. And I would say this, that anyone seeing this documentary that happens to have expertise within this, and I do mean expertise, that has a background, then touch base, because we're working on this at this time, and I know that this will produce many rewards of knowledge, of the migrations of, yes, the Hebrew alphabet, it's found here. Ancient Ogham, well, the Celts, you bet. Up the Rio Grande River in New Mexico, present day New Mexico. I'll tell you, I have fallen in love with the search of finding rocks that speak, that cry out for the message to be delivered. I trust and I hope that you will enjoy this documentary, and what a pleasure it was to the crew again in this great location. I know you're going to enjoy it. Just sit back and let's go into these between 50 and 60 drawings you'll be showing in this documentary.
Mother Nature works in our favor many times. It would almost seem that in this particular drawing that we had chalked it or something so that it shows up better, but this is natural moss that has in its light green that makes this particular face, which is an individual that we see apparently is wearing a crown. Which, does it mean nobility? There is one thing for certain, it is not a feathered bonnet. It is a crown. And as we go to the other side of the stone without moss, we do see a letter there. In what language? Well, we're going to pin many of these together at a later time. And in replaying this particular documentary, you'll be able to learn a great deal from the various drawings that would not have been clear perhaps even at this time as you assemble them, put them together. Here is a hand, and then we have another face. Now the moss is not over this face. I want you to look at it closely. I'm on the chin, and this almost looks Egyptian. I do not believe it is, but if you can, I'll get Mike to even zoom in on this one so you get a good picture. And here we have what could be another hand and yet another hand. It is amazing as we see the story that is told on the rocks here in this valley. This stone on which we're now standing has hieroglyphs all over this particular side. There is the drawing here, and we'll move in on it as we change locations, and I suppose we should do that right now, and we will go further. We'll be covering many drawings today, and again, as forestated, all in a very small area. We are at an advantage for distance, for sight, and we are in a perfect line of sight with the stones that you observed in the last documentary. It is amazing as this is all pieced together, and when the picture does come together and we see the various peoples that have traveled through this great valley. Water is life, especially in a desert, wilderness land. And the water of the Rio Grande certainly supported much life up and through this great state of New Mexico, Texas, and so forth. We're starting here on a boulder that is indeed some of the most ancient writings. The reason I judge that, and I will not mention a date because certainly some of them have almost disappeared from the surface, most by percussion, I believe, if not all. Let's start here with a sunburst, a beautiful sunburst. Rays a little longer than you might see on some, and perhaps even weeping to a degree. meaning the person that accomplished this no doubt was very emotional. Here we have a letter in ancient stone, and I don't know if you can see this. This is the root branch, and then we have Ogham, perhaps, crossing. We will investigate this further and give you a further report upon it. And as you can see, some of these writings are so ancient that it's obvious, such as this one, that years later someone come along and even it is ancient. But the age on some of these and the various alphabets, I'm going to move across, and I think it will be impossible that you see all these. Now here is one that is so ancient that even here with the naked eye it's very difficult to make out. It's possibly something similar to, I'm not saying it is, Triogam. And here is a perfect example of Tifnik, the dot alphabet. Here we have another sunburst. It's an interesting sunburst. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rays coming from it, and then letters here made in some alphabet. Again, we will investigate this. We have some very good close-ups and another very small ancient sunburst. Now, here we have an ancient, again, is it Ogham? I think it is. I submit that I feel strongly that this is possibly ancient Ogham from Ireland that we even have record of in some of Oglanfala's tomb, his chair. And notice the chain. And then we drop back into some very ancient drawings again. And much of this I'm passing over, I notice as I go, but that's well and good. You'll be able to pick it up on the still shots that we have. Notice this track. Is it a bear track? Well, it's possible. It probably looks more like a bear track than a men's track, but it also, in certain languages, has meaning. And here we have, again, into the trunk, another alphabet, and we see here, and then here is a very old, I mean, it has almost disappeared from the rock, which I believe to be a calendar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 7th month, and then it tails off, and here is an ancient letter. I want you to get a good, this can even be a form of ancient Mediterranean. Here we see what we would call looking almost like a W in doubled, and then some perfect Tiffany. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, with 4, I believe this is H. We'll go into this in the studio at a later time. We have another sunburst here. So many of these drawings, alphabets, yes, all from one. No, it's obvious from the dating, with even the naked eye of the age of some of these. There are, which is Scott had brought out earlier, a very precious point about this. You see no interference in these drawings from recent so-called would-be improvers on that is ancient, or vandalism is another way of putting it, destruction of the history, the ancient history of America. Okay, we're going to move right up on the stone itself now and give you a little better look at the top of it. I want to draw special attention, and I'll show you an example of what Scott and I have been trying to tell you. Though this is ancient, notice this circle drawn by percussion, and then the leg or staff running up, and then we have this peculiar V section and a crossbar on the shaft. Now, I want you to note how this has gone over this ancient drawing here, this being the base of the ancient, and with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have 6 crossbars on this. And immediately, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this real good, but you have an ancient drawing similar to those of Ogunfala's tomb, with only 1, 2, 3, 4 shafts and 1/2. Now, we're going to try to have a certain doctor give us a letter on this, which will either be added to this documentary at a later time. There is so much translating to be done on this stone, from the ancient, far distant ancient, near ancient, Tifneg, and also again, this letter is a letter in 2 alphabets that I couldn't think of. So you see how fascinating this stone is. This is rather a large stone, and Mike and I are standing on the portion, and if I were to take one step backwards, it would be quite a fall, because we were up on the side of a ledge. The shooting is a little difficult, so bear with us as we begin to show you the remainder of the stone. Here you have the double line coming around and into this. There are 3 on a bar of pennants, which there are alphabets using this that can't even be called trouser ogum. I'm not saying that this is trouser ogum, but as you see, there is that possibility. Here we have what would appear to be a hand, and I'm going to say that it is near ancient. Please bear with me on terminology. And then just below it, they erased ancient, distant ancient writings that evidently they felt had worn away enough that they were not desecrating another man's writing. And here we have a type of shield that is both up and down, and possibly we have a form that can be ogum, or even from another particular alphabet. Another double bar at the top, and the writing even continues over the side. All these fine details and point. What I'm touching now is very, very ancient, along a natural crack in the stone. How fascinating this location. We say if stones could speak, I hope that man will have the ingenuity, modern man that is to say, to translate. I know that some of this stone can be translated further, and certainly it will be done, either to an appendix to this particular documentary. By that I mean the Tifneg, the Ogum, can definitely be translated. There are certain symbols that could even be directions that perhaps we will never be able to release, because we're not free to release what the direction or the point goes to. So I think a fascinating stone boulder. This is a huge boulder. Again, in that Rio Grande River Valley in New Mexico. My, at the people, what a busy intersection of life this valley must have been. Okay, we want to show you the reverse side of the stone that had the faces facing in a different direction. I call your attention to this very interesting lettering on this side of the stone. I will trace here so that you get an idea, but notice particularly here at the top, you have 3 bars with cross. Is it ogum? Well, it's a little different than any ogum that I have ever seen with the cross here, and yet perhaps not. And here again, I want to draw your attention to this particular figure with the circle, the main staff, and 1, 2, 3 crossbars. Again, calling attention to Ireland. This particular mark is found throughout Oklahoma, places in Texas, and especially here in New Mexico. And the various writing, as again, we have not colored the stone. This is natural moss. And it shows you some of the trailing or the drawings there. What an interesting thing.
Over here we have what Arnold has identified as being Ogham. We have the lines across here, and then the running lines here. And then there's the symbol up here that we just looked at on the last rock that continues over the top of the rock. Down here we have, excuse me, I'm in the light here. We have an oblong circle here with 1, 2, 3, 4 lines with the crossbar in it, and then as we go over the top, we'll probably have to move the camera to get it all in, and then it changes to a different sort of lines on the other side.
Okay, we're going to pick up here where Scott has just brought you to this part that overlaps from this side of this boulder. I'll draw your attention to this burst, or a partial burst. Now, hang on to your hats. We have here a double V, but note here and here, this is known by some as a Christian cross through, or it has been identified in other works as this. Is it? Well, I'm not sure that I would go along with that, but notice the I would even say Druid type. But then here we have a burst at the top of the stone. Again, I would call your attention to ancient Irish Ogham. It seems to pop up occasionally in these stones. What you're looking at here is very, very ancient. Now, watch these alphabets carefully. I'm going to lay this pointer down. Again, we have the circle, oblong circle, with a bar, double staffed. We have one without the circle, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 staffs. We have here a square, 1 bar, and we have 3 crossbars, not including these at the top. And again, as Scott has mentioned, and I have, here's your chain again. Is this an alphabet, a different distance of measurements? I have known in certain Spanish writings where this would be certain mountain peaks. I hesitate to say that that's what this particular one is. Now I'm going to move back to the bottom of the stone. This is very ancient, dear one, very, very ancient. Again, very akin to what you will see in Olenfala's tomb. Olenfala, as many of you know, many believe that he was Jeremiah that took the daughters of Zedekiah from the Middle East to Great Britain, fulfilling the prophecy that is written, I shall overturn. I shall crop off tender boughs and replace them. We see a crossbar, 1, 2, 3, 4 here. Now note. And then we see what a sunburst. And I want you to think ancient Irish Ogham again. I want you to think ancient Irish Ogham. This is so faint, and this has been incorporated into this, that the circle comes on around. Here is your inner circle with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 legs out to the outside of that particular circle. When you see this and this, along with this particular stone here, you've got to think ancient Irish Ogham again. And I don't want to make it sound as though I'm forcing a case. You know, you don't have to force a case when you have so many perfect drawings and the fact that they are ancient. And that you've heard the saying in this day and time, ratchet jaw. If I were a ratchet jaw, you know, as a person that talks too much, if there was ever one place where they tried to do a lot of talking from that age to this, to you, it is this particular site. All right, we're real fortunate today to have Scott's son TJ along with us. Hey, I'll tell you what, he's a great help in this documentary. TJ, it's good to have you with us today.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to get into this stone here. It is a fascinating stone, and I want to go, we'll start on this side. This is so ancient that it's actually deteriorating away. These appear to be dots, or what some would say, Tifnig. There's quite a message written here. We have stills of this, and it'll take an expert to decipher this one. And then we begin to drift over into, and note here, this particular letter repeated over and over and over again. It is, again, a type of letter that could fit two separate, at least alphabets that I know of offhand. And I'm certainly not an expert, nor do I claim to be in ancient alphabets. So we'll leave the deciphering of that to the experts. Now, as we move on this way, then you will note that we begin to break out into the more familiar beside the Tifnig. Okay, again, we have an inner circle, a center circle, an outer circle, one staff running in this direction, a bar running here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 legs. So we have one leg. Is it Ogham? Well, we'll see. You have to be real careful up here. When you step backwards, sometimes it can be a long ways down. And I want to make a little room here so that you can see. Note here, again, a familiar marking. And then again, this is very ancient, probably done at the same time as this. And as you can see, they are so ancient, they are actually beginning to melt away. There is no doubt in my mind, and I'm making a guess, a guesstimate, let's put it that way, or would you allow me even an educated guess? By some of the things I know that are included in these drawings, we're talking about 400 or 500 BC. Think about it. The alphabets match. The message basically matches. We're talking about 400 years before Christ. How ancient these markings are, and what a precious spot it is. So, again, one of the many other stones on this site, and I must say, I think, in all the documentaries we've ever made, that this site, I just stand in awe as I see the writings. And even as we stand here with scouts that are branching out, searching the area, there has been, which he'll be sharing with you later, we have an Indian village. He has found 2 artifacts, perhaps he'll give us a look at when he returns back down. You saw him a few moments ago, high on the peak. But things come together as the crew here in New Mexico continues to scout. Scouting for you, bringing forth and recording history. History that has been history for many, many years. Again, a guesstimate, I'm going to play it safe and say 400 to 500 BC. The rocks speak. And I'm real glad that you all are here, that you get to enjoy this, and that we have a platform whereby we can share these things with you. TJ, thanks for being along today, son. You've been a great help, and he's a fine young man, and I know Scott's real proud of him. And we'll continue on then to the next stone. Here we have one of the most fascinating things in all of the Americas that I have searched with this site that Scott has located here. I find a drawing, whatever you wish to call it, and we'll analyze it a little closer, and you'll see there's a great deal more to it perhaps than at first glance. Were the Vikings in America? Well, it's obvious that this man has a beard, that he has a sharp nose feature, that he is from the North Country. Note the headdress. We have horns, and I think this will help a great deal in identifying it. Difficult to pick up. You have maybe an inch or 2 drop and then a circle here on the end from the tip of that horn. And watch closely. The beard and the facial lines with this bar, which is the mouth, gives you a form. Could it be ancient Ogham? And how about this? And here we have what is very possibly a roadrunner. I want you to see the head of the bird, the 2 feet, and you know when people travel, have you ever driven down the highways recently and heard someone on a CB say, hey, this is the roadrunner? People that travel like to call themselves roadrunners, all right? So just a thought, and perhaps a little bit of humor, but such a serious painting. Let's go to the second gentleman here. If you will make his, I wish to call attention to the eyes, okay, very specifically made. There would be some that would say, well, this could be an eye of Baal here. Well, I don't think so. I'm going to have to go against that because of the headdress of perhaps a priest. These could be, and probably are, horns, with the small horn outcropping on the sides, such as you will see on, say, a young buck, a deer horn. And so immediately some of you are going to say, well, then that must be Indian. It definitely is not, for the simple reason of the beards drawn into these people's faces, and the ogum included in the face, a message in the face. Note also that we have a headdress here. This is a perfect triangle. A headdress of what type? Well, we want to have some of the experts give us some opinions on this. What will their opinions be? Maybe much what any one of us would think or say. That it is a priest. Is it a Hebrew priest? Well, that is a possibility. I just suggest. And then note the face of this man. Not quite as sharp as this, however, this being a profile could account for that. But notice also the bar and what is possibly ogum in the very face of this man. There's so much that can be studied from this. And then we have a face further off to the left. Note this letter in this cheek, not in the other. Note the bar and the chin lines with the face. And then we have a small lettering. Let us say if this were the man's shoulder coming down, he's almost got an insignia on his shoulder. Is that what it is? Well, is this the sleeve arm here? Well, we don't know. We'll just have to analyze it closer. But there is one thing that I want to make perfectly clear. This is not, I repeat, this is not a fake. It is very obvious because of this site and the various languages that the dating that is found within this and the moss that covers, that this is a part of this site, which is right in the center of it, basically. And these people were here. It does not matter what your history books from a local library might say. The history books that are real America, these stones speak louder than those books do. And it is obvious that probably we have here one of the best documentations that the Vikings were even as well as up the Mississippi, that they came up the Rio Grande. Who were the Vikings? Many people go by the name Viking. There were Vikings from most all of Northern Europe. There were Vikings from Ireland. There were Vikings from Sweden, Norway, many places. Oftentimes they had a very rugged and hard reputation. But there's one thing you'll find about them. Always in history, when they were exposed to Christianity, as it's a well-written history even in your library books, they accepted that Christianity. Do not feel that I'm trying to turn all things to Christendom. I am not. But yet, I think that before one would call the Vikings a bunch of barbarians, they'd better study their history a little closer and understand that some perhaps so-called experts write and read a little too much into the one label, Viking, as it applied to so many different people. Well, you want to take another close look at it? There you have it. A profile with ogum making up the beard and the face, with the horns, with the long hair, and another headdress with horn, a Viking priest. Well, the Vikings, before they were even religious people, before they adopted to those that did Christianity, they There were two certain, what was their god? Odin. Odin. That was their cry, yes. Could he be a priest of Odin? Well, that's a possibility. Those things that we leave to your own decision, your own imagination. But the important part is this. I want to reiterate again. It is not a fake. I would stake my reputation upon that. It's very real. It's ancient. I would date it along with the drawings that you have heard me called near ancient. Not those distant ancient, but the near ancient, judging from the deterioration of the stone. We're going to be showing you a continuation of this on another side, and I'm going to have Scott explain to you the reaction that drawings can have on the stones over a period of years. Well, there you've got it. Take a long look. Probably one of the better proofs in the Americas today of the history of old, that America is not a new land. America is an old land, dating back way before the years that our Lord walked this earth.
This here is another example of some ancient writing, and what has happened to this picture here, you can probably see some white outlines in here, and that is a big problem we have. This isn't moss. There is moss up here that didn't bother it much up here. This is like a turban hat, some type of headdress hat, and these maybe possibly a feather or horn or something coming off the side. But the point is someone is at one time or another taken a piece of chalk, a white chalk, which is real destructive to these petroglyphs. There's really no accepted way to bring these petroglyphs out better to look at them. The only really accepted way is to possibly pour water on them. But a lot of people come in here and they take white chalk, or they find a white piece of rock or something like that, and then they inscribe in here, and all it really does is ruin it for the next person who comes along, because the chalk takes so many years to come off that the person who put the chalk on might have seen something, and there possibly was something else there altogether, and they just put their own lines in. So I'd like to discourage anyone who comes out and looks at these petroglyphs from using any type of tracing material to highlight them. Okay, here we are again at another particular ancient drawing here. I want to point out, mostly because it is so faint, mostly I just want to point out here the different ways, how they look in different ages. As you've seen before, those were some of the not quite so ancient. This particular one here is very ancient, and you can tell because when these symbols were put in here, they were put in with a sharp pointed object, and you can barely make out where the points were still in there. From the rain, this being exposed to the rain and the wind and the weather here has more or less worn the rock down. These here were quite deep when they were first put in here, and now it's worn down to where you can hardly make them out. And it just give a little idea of how we're determining the different time spans here. We have a couple of symbols here, kind of a upside down U. It's a double line, and a circle over here with two lines coming off it, and then we have a straight line here here again we have the curved or triangular shaped lines here, and it continues on up in here. As we get up in here, it gets fainter and fainter. When I was talking at the other rock, I started to tell the difference between a petroglyph and a pictograph, and I think I'll go ahead and finish that up now. And a pictograph is a painting on a rock, and this is a petroglyph where they actually took a hammer and stone and carved down into the rock.
Okay, here again we have one of these circles with straight lines, no bar, and then we have a bar with one short, one long, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines away from the bar, with a circling bar joining. These are ancient, and yet someone went to a great deal of difficulty on this particular drawing to hammer that into that stone, which is still holding real good, regardless of the fact that the same stone where we have markings, they're showing a great deal of wear.
Okay, I want to introduce you here to Clark again. I know he's been introduced here before. While we was, after I mentioned the fact that there's probably a village site around here, Clark, the adventurer he is, climbed up here. Oh, I'd say it's probably about 300-400 feet up this cliff face here. And while he was up there, he found some evidence that there possibly was a village up there. There's rock mounds and different things. It looks like from some of the things that were up there that someone has done some archaeological work up there. I'm just going to let Clark tell you what he found up there. Clark?
Now, there was circles of rock that at one time had been stacked up, but that all fell down. You know, there's about 3 of them, pretty good sized circles, quite a few rock in them. So,
well, here we are. We're kind of at the end of our quest here, and I just wanted to point out this one particular boulder here, and all the fabulous artwork that's done on it. It's such a huge boulder that I don't believe we can do it justice with a movie camera. I have come in here and made still shots of it that Arnold can use in his research. And we have a demon over here of some type. He's got real sharp teeth and the big eyeballs, and it's kind of different kind of petroglyph than what I'm used to seeing. I've been going out here since about February and guiding Arnold around here and going out and looking for these particular sites so that we can bring them to you into your living rooms and enjoy them as well as we can. It's been a great pleasure working with Arnold and the crew, and I hope to continue on in this type of work as a guide and lead man in these documentaries. And I just want to thank you all for watching them, and it's been a great pleasure bringing them to you from down here in New Mexico.
All right. Well, Scott, it's been a pleasure again. I think we got a good one this time. Appreciate your help and your research and getting everything set up. It's a blessing.
Well, that's just fine, Arnold. I appreciate you all coming down here and enjoying New Mexico anytime you...
Oh, listen, it's kind of sad when we have to go. We
yes,
love
it
this
is.
country so much. Otis, thanks for the use of that van.
It's a pleasure.
Well,
my pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to see you. We just kind of feel like a second home here in a way.
You're family to us now.
Well, all right. Clark, God bless you.
God bless you, too.
You hang in there, and we appreciate your help so much. And TJ isn't here. If you'll tell him thanks for us.
I certainly will.
And we'll get packed and loaded up here and head back toward home. So
we hate to see you go, but
well, you know how that is. We got to get back and get to work. But
yeah,
it's
there's
sure
work
been
to
a
be
pleasure.
done.
Thanks a million. We appreciate you.
All right, we're going to continue our search through this great area. Our Father has made it very clear that His people migrated. Those 10 tribes that dispersed to the world over. And we thank our Father for the privilege of allowing us to bring to you a part of these migrations. You know, the part we take you to is so secluded and so unknown by other people that I hope you enjoy seeing many first as we continue to work. And remember what I said. Truly, when we left this area and this great mountain was behind me, it seemed that I could sense the spirits. And don't make something super spiritual out of this, but I could sense them saying, deliver our message. Thousands of man-hours put into chiseling these huge graphs and alphabets, messages in the stone. Well, we've done that. We've presented it to you. It is our prayer that we will be able to continue interpreting and bring you a fuller message with their message to this world today. For, quite frankly, the hours that were placed there putting these messages in the stone, they certainly wanted you to hear their voice. We're working on it. Hope you enjoyed it. God bless. Another documentary from TRC, Truth or Consequences, the truth in the stone. And those that would call fakes, well, what is a fake that is the same as one found and placed in Ireland 400 BC, where we see the same drawings in the Rio Grande River, even if it was a fake 4,000 years ago, and they are that ancient? Would be a very interesting fake. Do you understand what I'm saying? It is not a fake. These were God's children as they traveled. God bless you. Listen to the stones. Always look down and look up. Look around you. Many messages have been left from our ancestors. All right, God bless you. I trust that you've enjoyed this documentary.